Norway joined Spain and Ireland to formally recognize a Palestinian state as Israel continues to pound the besieged Gaza Strip. WION's principal diplomatic correspondent Sidhant Sibal spoke to Norway's foreign minister to know about the reasonings behind the move. That and much more in a freewheeling interview. Listen into this exclusive conversation.
Norway, Spain and Ireland have recognized the state of Palestine. Now over 140 countries recognize Palestine. There are roughly 193 member states of the United Nations. With me is a very special guest joining from Oslo, the Norwegian Foreign Minister. So welcome to WION. My first question to you is, why recognize the state of Palestine in the current situation? What is the reason behind recognizing it now?
Thank you very much. First, it's very good to be on your program. I want to say that we do this because we think it's the right thing to do, but also because we think it's the right time to do it. It might sound paradoxical that we work on recognition now in the middle of a shooting war, but actually we do this because we want to add our voice to all those who are saying that we need to get out of this horrible cycle of violence where you have terrorist attacks on Israel, and then very massive response overstepping the boundaries of international law in Gaza, and settler violence increasing settlements in the West Bank. All of this together is a cycle of violence, and we want to reach out a hand to all those moderate forces who still believe in a two-state solution. And we do not do this in a vacuum, because the three countries mentioned and many other European countries are now working closely with an Arab group of foreign ministers who have taken the initiative to update the old idea of a regional peace in the Middle East, where you combine the Palestinian state and the recognition and establishment of a Palestinian state, the strengthening of the Palestinian Authority, together with the normalization between Saudi Arabia and other Arab states and Israel. So what we're trying to do is to give some impetus to that process. And this very weekend, we had meetings in Brussels between Arab and European ministers, together with the EU and the Arab League and the Organization for Islamic Cooperation. And I thought they were very constructive meetings, thinking of such a regional plan.
So will the recognition make a difference on the ground? The war seems to be endless, and the move looks like a mere symbolic move.
So first, this is not what will end the war, because the end of the war needs to be, we need a ceasefire, and after a ceasefire we need to work on the humanitarian situation of the people in Gaza, who are not only hurt by bombs, but also starving, and where you have diseases and a very problematic situation, and all infrastructure destroyed. So recognition is not about that. Recognition is about what comes later. Recognition is to send a signal into the political process towards what will be the long-term outcome of all of this. And we are convinced that that has to be a Palestinian state, that it has to be a Palestinian state living side by Israel, run by the people who are now running the Palestine Authority, President Abbas and Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa, who has formed a new government quite recently. So if it was only recognition, you would be right, this would be a symbolic move. But because the recognition is anchored in a regional process, which is rapidly evolving, we think is very meaningful. And we have long time ago decided that we don't need to wait for the end of a peace process to recognize. We could also do it at the moment where it would inspire the peace process. And we found, together with Ireland and Spain, that this is the right moment. And we know that other European countries will be following in the coming weeks.
Sir, Norway has historically played an important role in terms of the peace process in West Asia. The Oslo Peace Accords are well known. What kind of role Norway sees itself in the future when it comes to ongoing efforts to resolve the ongoing conflict? We have seen almost on a daily basis reports of deaths emerging from Gaza.
So first, I have to say we see terrible images every day, and the latest images from all these burnt, destroyed children and women in the tent camps in outside Rafah who were there because Israel had told them to go exactly there because they were going to go into Rafah. This is horrible and it affects us all, and we need to stop this war. The actual mediations towards a ceasefire is led by Qatar and Egypt, and of course the two sides, Israel and Hamas. We are only in a supportive role to that work. We facilitate some messages here and there, and we have contact with all groups, but this is not Norway's key role right now. What we particularly emphasize, because of our historic role, as you correctly mentioned, is that we need to get the political process back on track. And we need to do that in a manner that is updated to the realities of 2024. The Oslo process was in 1993. It was just after the end of the Cold War. It was a very different international circumstance. So this, in a sense, is 2.0. It's a software update, if you like, of Oslo's approach to this. We still want a two-state solution. We always wanted that, but we want to do that now much more anchored in the region. So the leadership here are some of the neighboring countries, and we are leading what you can call the European support group.
So US, UK, EU see Palestine as part of a negotiated process. Do you see this something that can be taken forward, or do you see it as a dead end, that a Palestine, a state, viable state of Palestine cannot be an outcome of a negotiated process given the situation on ground?
So the problem is that the Netanyahu government in Israel has stated very clearly that they are not interested in negotiating a two-state solution, at least not at this stage. And that has been clear for a long time. This is not only after 7 of October and the Hamas attacks on Israel. It has been their position for many years. So with that government, it seems that we will have to wait rather long if we want the two sides to calmly sit down and negotiate. So that's why this group that I'm mentioning, this Arab-European group with some other countries, are now trying to see how can we start to put the different pieces of the puzzle together. Of course, at some point, Israel has to be part of it. It goes without saying. But we are not waiting for them to be ready before we start planning for this. And out of this, we hope that there will be a conference on the implementation of the two-state solution. And Israel will be welcome any time. But right now, they are focused on fighting Hamas in Gaza. I think what we are doing is in the interest of the Palestinian people, obviously, but also the people of Israel. Because I honestly think that it will be easier to live safely and securely in Israel if they contribute to the establishment of a Palestinian site that they can work with on the other side. This was the vision of Oslo. We still want that, but we need to do that taking into account the realities we are living in right now.
And coming to Asia, how do you see India's role in the situation when it comes to the Israel and Palestine situation and India's position amidst the conflict?
So, of course, India recognized Palestine already in 1988 as one of the first countries. So what we just did last week is something India did many years ago. So India has relations both to the state of Palestine, but also to Israel, and quite good relations, I believe, to both sides. India is the largest country on the planet. India's foreign policy is important, and I very much would welcome Indian support and contributions to this work of allowing a regionally embedded peace process to develop further. I think have more Asian engagement in that, also outside of the Arab part of Asia, would be warmly welcome.
And sir, in your first answer, you pointed to conversation with the European countries as well. Are you looking at more European countries joining your country in recognizing Palestine? And if yes, can you name some of them?
The first answer is yes. We are expecting more countries to follow soon. We actually know of countries who will do it within the next weeks. But I don't want to name them because it's up to them to make their own. I'm not their spokesperson, but I know So at least some of them, and I think there's a movement now among European countries. And of course, some European countries already did. Sweden and Iceland, just to name a couple, did this previously. But what we now want to see is a number of European countries to come to the same conclusion that it's time to recognize, but not only to recognize, but also to support this idea of this regional peace initiative.
And are you looking at sanctioning Israel as well? We have seen how there have been reports coming from Europe as to how the European leaders are looking at this possibility as well.
So Norway already has an absolute ban on the sale of weapons and also on military-grade non-weapon equipment. So this is already in place a long time. We are also have a strong recommendation against trade with occupied territories. And we have sanctions on some individuals in the West Bank who have been involved in violence. But when it comes to broader economic sanctions, that will be a discussion at the European Union. And a few days ago, many members of the European Union said that maybe it's time to look into broader sanctions as well. And in that case, we would follow the developments of the European Union, because Norway never has its own sanctions. We always do that in unison with the other like-minded countries.
And my last question, I know you are running short of time. We have seen a strong Israeli reaction as well. They have recalled their ambassador from Oslo. How do you see Israeli reaction over you recognizing the state of Palestine?
Well, we knew that they would not like it, so that was expected. Recalling your ambassador for consultations is one of the tools in the diplomatic toolbox. We have said very clearly that we have no plans of reciprocating. We want to maintain normal, good relations with Israel. And I think that we will let the dust settle. I think they did these steps in a sense to dissuade other countries from doing the same, but my impression is that that had limited effect. But Norway is a friend of Israel, just as much as we are a friend of the Palestinian people. And we want to remain that, but we also want to be honest with our friends when we are critical of their behavior. And we think Israel has made many mistakes in the way that they responded to the terrorist attacks on the 7th of October. Fighting terror is something every country is entitled to do, but there are rules for warfare, and many of those rules have been violated. And that is not only my view, that is also the view of our leading international courts.
On an optimistic note, you're hopeful that a viable state of Palestine can exist side by side with Israel, with Israeli side getting its security guarantees?
Yes, I am convinced that that is not only possible, but actually the only credible option.
Well, on that note, thank you so much, sir, for joining from Oslo and speaking to WION.
Thank you.